So yeah, kind of continuing the theme of kind of experiential and distributed VR in places. We've got Phil Stuart from Preloaded, Dave Patten from the Science Museum to talk about their work together bringing VR into museum environments. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Thanks so much for coming. I know there's lots of really good talks going on today, and it's great to see so many people here. So I'm Phil, this is Dave, and today we're going to talk about how we've put VR into museums, into Science Museum, London Science Museum, with our new project, HandyPage VR. I think what's quite interesting about VR is that on the face of it, it doesn't really feel like a particularly good medium for museums, in that it's a kind of a personal experience, it's completely encapsulated, it's a very personal experience. But today we're going to talk about the ambition behind Science Museum's HandyPage VR and kind of like how it's actually enhanced the visitor experience. It's been live since November. We've been doing various sessions, kind of putting it out into the gallery, and it's tested really well. So we're going to show you this. We're going to show you our findings, and I'm also going to talk about Preloaded's approach to designing low threshold, inclusive experiences that are content rich, that can work for a really diverse audience and the kind of physical space of a museum. We've also only got 20 minutes, and there's two of us, so we're probably almost inevitably going to go over, so I'm going to move quickly. So just a bit of context. So Preloaded is a game studio. It's a very unique game studio. It's been going for 16 years. That's not why it's unique. But it's unique because it uses, this is our mission, using the power of play to solve problems and change lives. So we're trying really, really hard to balance kind of purpose and intent, like transformational intent, with entertainment value. We're trying to bring those two things together and create that balance. And it's why I love working there. We've kind of had the privilege of working with some amazing organisations, and we've worked on content as diverse as things like death and philosophy and neuroscience, cognition, resilience, drug addiction, quantum physics, ecosystems. We just work with loads and loads of different content as well, and it's the joy to come to work every day. When we talk about purpose, though, and VR, that's some work. So VR with purpose is kind of what we're kind of like, is what I'm talking about today. And really we think about it, it's really sitting across 4 different areas. So the first one is better than reality. So using virtual reality to try and take you to a place that you couldn't go in reality, to be able to experience things or see things that you couldn't necessarily do in reality or would be possible in reality. The second one is empathy and curiosity. So looking at how we can put you into an environment that you can experience and understand someone's different perspectives. The third one is learning, and as a studio that's focused so much in games-based learning over the last sort of 10 years, we're really passionate about hands-on learning and learning by doing. And the thing we feel really strongly about VR is it allows you to get even closer to that experience of feeling like you're there. So we're really interested in how like VR can improve the learning efficacy of experiences. And then finally, the physiological is really just looking at the power of VR to create really powerful experiences that can affect you and have a deep, long-lasting effect on the person who's experiencing it, whether it's psychological or physiological or even physical. So doing lots of work around sort of CBT and obsessive compulsive disorders and mental health and that sort of thing. And that sits in a very nice sort of well-being health area that we're very passionate about. And all those areas, they're not really mutually exclusive, they kind of cross over. And actually HandyPage VR, what we're going to be talking about today, sits really neatly on Better Than Reality and Learning Plus. So that's the setup. I'm going to hand over to Dave, and Dave's going to talk about the project and the ambition behind it, and then I'm going to move on to talk about design approach.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So I'm Dave Patten. I'm head of new media at the Science Museum, and my role there is to develop and commission digital media for exhibitions. And we've been playing with VR for probably over 20 years. What I want to talk to you about today, we set a new work strand up in the museum, which we had signed off by a board about a year ago, called Digital Lab. We've always done lots of very experimental work, and we wanted somewhere to kind of separate that off from the mainstream work we do and to be able to talk about it in a more cohesive fashion. One of the reasons this is important to us is I've spent the last 18, 19 years building exhibitions and contemporary science exhibitions. We're now going back and revisiting our big permanent collection galleries, and exhibitions last for between 3 and 5, 7 years. Permanent galleries have a life of 25 to 30 years. So in the exhibitions, we've been able to put lots of technology in the exhibitions, which our visitors really like. It really helps us tell the stories we need to tell. That's not possible in the permanent galleries because we can't sustain the technology over 25 years. So we're looking for different approaches. So one of the role of the Digital Lab is really to explore how museums can fulfill their function in the digital age. And it allows us to experiment with new forms of interpretation, storytelling, visualizations. And one of the things we did very early on with the support of Samsung, who funded this first tranche of work, was to do some work for the new mathematics gallery, which opened in December. It's a beautiful gallery. It was designed by Zaha Hadid, and it's her only permanent gallery anywhere in the world. And it's a gallery that looks at the history of mathematics over 400 years and how it impacts our lives in all sorts of different ways. And at the heart of the gallery, there's this aircraft, which is a handy page HP-29. Thanks, Phil. And this gallery, this aircraft inspired the design of the whole exhibition. So the plane was designed in the 1920s to help make flight safer. So it has some unique features that allowed the plane to take off and land at much slower speeds than were normal at the time. And Zaha Hadid and her studio used this plane as the inspiration for the gallery. So they took... Oh, this is skipping on me. Okay. So they took the model of the aircraft as though it had been in a wind tunnel. So these are airflows running around the aircraft. And they used those to lay out the gallery. So all of the way that all of the display cases are laid out follow these pressure lines around the aircraft, and there are markings on the floor, and then there are some big structures that sit behind the aircraft which represent the turbulent airflow the aeroplane kicks up when it flies, and these are these beautiful fabric structures. As part of this work, we LiDAR scanned the aircraft because the HA needed a good digital model of that aircraft to work from. And what we wanted to do was to interpret that aircraft in a different way. So we've got some very simple film-based interpretation on gallery, but we thought this was an ideal opportunity to experiment with some virtual reality-based interpretation. So we basically did a tender. It was a competition. We had a very large number of responses and Preloaded with a successful applicant for that. And then we worked with Preloaded in a very short space of time. It was about 12 weeks from start to finish to get a product onto the floor. And Phil's now going to talk about the design approach for that.
Great. So as a studio, we really think about designing for VR like we think about designing any project. It's very user-centered. It takes the requirements and the constraints of the brief, and really we're just sort of focusing on designing the best possible user experience. For a museum, there are obviously some unique constraints. So we obviously have a very diverse audience going through, from young to old, people who are digital natives and people who don't use technology at all. We also have a physical space that we need to design for and make sure there's enough through flow of the actual space as well. And the actual experience was going to be facilitated, so we have to design for that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the design approach. There's a number of principles that kind of underpin how we've designed for it. This is, I thought what would be quite helpful would be to give you an overview of the experience at a very high level. I'll run through the design approach, then Dave's going to jump through and actually walk you through the actual experience. So this is something that we did very early on. It changed a little bit as we moved through, but really the overall kind of structure of the experience was arrived at very, very quickly. I'm sure anyone who's making VR has their own way of kind of articulating what they're actually trying to convey, and this was just sort of really our first attempt, I guess. Looking down the middle, you've got a sort of standard storyboard. mapping out kind of the view, the core story we're trying to tell, and then above that, we've got this idea of kind of experience intensity. And that was important for us because as a studio that's very focused on learning design and trying to learning, like efficacy of learning within what we make, we want to try and make sure the learning is as good as possible. And our hypothesis for this was that the content delivery should happen at points where the experience intensity is lowest. The troughs of the experience should be we should be delivering content. Wow, 5 minutes already. I can't believe it. Are you serious? Okay, so I'm going to move on really quickly. Okay, so our design principles. The first one, design for everyone. Obviously, we need to make an experience that works for a really diverse audience. That means making sure that the experience, the thing that polarizes people, audiences who play VR, is really kind of motion sickness. So we wanted to make an experience that was very non-sickness inducing. The second one was really about immersion, so trying to make sure that this is mobile VR, of course, so we have no head tracking, and we need to make sure that we can deliver the best possible VR experience. So the best stereoscopic experience happens within 20 meters, but we also wanted to protect personal space. We didn't want kind of like wings flying over your head. So really, the whole story gets told within kind of between 1 and 20 meters. The third principle was about comfort. It's the seat of the experience, so we wanted to make sure that people weren't turning all the way around, and we wanted to try and avoid that kind of fatigue of looking in every different direction. The fourth one was about facilitation, so making sure the experience is very easy to facilitate. So this was really about making sure that a facilitator could say, look to the right, look there, and then move in, and we needed it to be able to start and stop very simply. But I should say we'll demo this afterwards. Anyone wants to have a go, we've got a couple of headsets with us, we'd love to show you. And then the final one was really about making it finite. So as a studio that's very focused on developing games with lots of player agency and lots of kind of open choices, actually finite was something that was a slight struggle for us. But as a museum that has many queues, many people wanting to play it, and a key set of learning outcomes, we needed to make sure that those learning outcomes could be delivered within a finite period of time. Should we skip the walkthrough? We've got to do it, haven't we?
So, we started off placing people in the hangar with the aircraft, but actually the core of this experience is around showing how the air flows across an aircraft, and particularly how it flows across some of the unique features of the aircraft. So if I get to the next slide. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Okay, so I think actually this is... Thanks, Phil. So at points we transition between a rendered model and this very clear white model, and then start to illustrate the airflows. So we're looking at the airflows over a standard wing and how aircraft fly, and then what difference those unique features of this plane make. So the unique features of this plane were a set of flaps on the back of the wing and a set of slots on the leading edge, which changed the way the air flows over the wing. So this is one of the key learning outcomes of the piece. The other thing we wanted to show was actually how the airflow had been used to inspire the design of the whole gallery. So the experience ends like this, and this is probably a 10-second clip. This is the turbulence kicked up by the air behind the aircraft. So it's visualized, that's data model visualized. And gradually the aircraft slows down and comes to rest. And then the gallery model grows up around the aircraft. So this is the 3D model of the gallery space from ZHA. And the point of that is this is an in-situ piece. So you do this looking at this aircraft. You do it actually on a seat that's here. So when you take your headset off, you're looking at the real-world view of that thing you've just seen. So it closes the experience down in a really satisfying way.
Do you want to take us through this?
Yeah, just some core takeaways. So we're taking it out into the gallery for an hour or two a week to do research. And then for our lates, which happen once a month, we have just won an award from the American Alliance of Museums, which is really gratifying. And these are some key takeaways. For us, we were quite surprised when we started to do the work about how few people have still had VR experiences, even in our museum. And the people in our museum are technically very literate. They're well above the normal for the population of the UK. And that's made doing some of the research quite tricky because people are really, really enjoying the experience, but it's quite hard to work out whether they're really enjoying this experience or actually they're really enjoying VR. And we think it's a combination of the two. Over 99% of the people that use the experience finish it completely. That's quite unusual in museums. The experience is almost 5 minutes long. For us, that's too long. We think these kind of experiences in a museum need to be probably between 3.5 and 4 minutes. And that's just because people divide their time up in the museum and they want to do lots of things and they're not willing to invest a lot of time in doing one thing in a museum. It's certainly demonstrated to us that VR is a legitimate tool for museums, and we'll be doing more of this, particularly around digital interpretation. But it does have to be facilitated at the moment. The equipment is not robust enough just to leave out on the gallery floor without people with it. And I guess the last one is really for Phil.
Well, only just to say that, I mean, it is possible to make something high quality within 10 weeks. I know we need to wrap up, so we'll wrap up. If anyone wants to have a go, we've got 2 devices. We can set something out there. I'd love to show you it. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.